Hello and welcome to another episode of Cardiff Central podcast. As ever, I'm Harley and I'm joined by the boys, Carwyn and Dan. How are you both doing today?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. I'm pretty buzzing about a couple of good results today. Um, yeah, I'll mention that for a bit later on. But go on, how are you, Dan?
Yeah, I'm all good, all good. Yeah, thank you. Went to the Rags game on the weekend, so I've seen Cardiff win a game for once.
So that's a story to tell your grandchildren. Say, I remember when Cardiff would win games. Um, yeah, so we'll push on to we'll talk about the Rags game in a bit. So just a quick couple of quick bits of news. So we can't with the news that's come out the last couple of days, we can't start the podcast without talking about two big retirements in Welsh rugby. Different. I mean, on the international stage, two different ends of the spectrum, but in terms of what they mean to their respective clubs, you know, uh, Ken Owens, the sheriff, and Josh Turnbull both retiring within a few days of each other. It feels like an end of an era with some of these players.
Yeah, it's disappointing, isn't it? I think it's two different ways. Is Josh Turnbull's retirement, which was I suppose they were both expected, but Josh Turnbull was expected, and we knew it was coming, and he'd had that farewell, he had that opportunity to say goodbye. Did his post match interview where he sort of said, "Oh, if this is my last game at Cap, then therefore," I know we all went, "Okay," so there was that hint. We know it's happening, therefore we can accept it. And he had his PE teacher give him his jersey. Everything was lovely about that. And then Ken's announcement, which I've been at press conferences earlier in the year where Dwayne Peel was saying that they were quite hopeful that they'd see Ken Owens again this season. Um, and sadly, it wasn't to be. There were rumours around November, December that it wasn't going to happen. Then it seemed like it might happen again, and unfortunately, due to injuries, had to retire and hasn't had that opportunity to say goodbye. And what a servant for Welsh rugby. 91 caps, 5 Lions Test caps, 7 seasons as captain of successive seasons as captain of Scarlets. That's just the overview. That's before you get into the individual stats of both his performances and the trophies he's lifted. So fair play to him. What an achievement and what a career.
Yeah, I mean, just on Turnbull, as the Cardiff podcast in particular, I just, what a player he's been for us for 10 years. I know he left under a slight cloud from the Scarlets, and I don't know, I think sometimes there's Cardiff people who can turn their nose up a bit, like us picking up like people leaving other regions in sort of weird circumstances. But it's gonna be weird him not playing for Cardiff now. That's how like staple he is. I think the stat when they announced it in the week was that before the season he was averaging 23 games a season for us, and I'm sure we don't even play 23 games. I mean, he must be doubling up in a couple or something. So whatever shirt he's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, captain or not captain, just like a top player and a great guy off the pitch as well. You guys chat a lot. I've chatted a lot about leadership and stuff, but there's been times where he's literally been carrying the team by himself. He's like the only leader on the pitch, sort of dragging us forwards, and great guy off the pitch as well. I wrote a piece on my site today, but and there's been a couple of other people say similar stories. And so my eldest son passed away in December 2021, and once I said about it, the first message I got was Josh Turnbull on behalf of the squad saying, like, really sorry to hear about your loss. Anything we can do, let us know, type thing. And I know Beardy, if people know him on Twitter or in real life, saying when he had his started his chemo for cancer, same thing. Turnbull straight there messaging saying like good luck with it and stuff. And you don't have to do that. Players don't. Yeah, he's the captain of the club and stuff, but that there's no need for him to be keeping up with supporters and messaging and stuff. So I think that just tells you what a top bloke he is as well off the pitch, and great that he's staying as an academy coach. I mean, that he's had a long coaching apprenticeship. So to get him in there with the academy and probably the Rags once they sort all that out, then yeah, a great guy to keep around, and his legacy will be his performances on the pitch, but also the players he's bringing through them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you touched on my point. I was going to say, don't be surprised to carry on seeing him around Cap because he has taken on a role with the academy, and I think he's going to be a fantastic player to learn from. Maybe not even just in the academy boys. I think there's still plenty in the senior squad who'd then as about I think we made him an answer to one of the Rap Christmas quiz questions of which players won the most different numbered jerseys in a season. It's him because he wore 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 19, and 20 all in one jersey, all in one season. I think I mean I don't think he did 21 because I don't think we did any 6-2 splits, but you guarantee if we had, he probably would have had that one as well. So yeah, and I said again, just because Sheriff and Cannonball Ken's probably one of the players who was sort of standout from my earlier years of watching rugby. And good luck to both of them, whatever they're doing next.
Yeah,
Bit
sorry, just on
happy.
that. Sorry, mate. I just wanted to say the most important thing is they're both involved in rugby going forward. Because I don't think you could meet two people that are more talismanic for and are better representatives of the game and need to be involved. And both are also, from a Welsh language standpoint, and they've both done a lot in the Welsh language and spoken a lot in the Welsh language and prioritized that at times, which has been really nice. And I think it's just crucial that they stay within the game and around the game because they could be helped, not just if it's coaching, but just involved in administration or anything really, just somewhere in the game.
If I was the Scarlets now, there's an element of jobs for the boys, but the way Ken spoke around that whole striking and all that sort of stuff. I mean, the mess that the Scarlets are in off the field now, they could certainly do worse than getting Ken in there somewhere to sort of have a look at their rugby structures and sort some of that stuff out with a real player focused mind on it.
Even as sort of like a club spokesman type person, because again, he does speak so really well, and he is a name. He's someone who carries a lot of weight with things. Moving on to sort of the other end of the career spectrum, Cardiff have announced 7 scientists senior academy. I've seen the names. I don't really know too much about them, so I'm going to pass on to someone who knows a little bit more about that with Dan. So do you just want to give a quick rundown?
Yeah, so there's seven players who've signed senior academy deals. They are Tom Howe, hooker, Dylan Barrett, brother of Reese I think he's at loosehead prop mostly now. He was at tight head prop briefly, but I think he's full-time loosehead. Evan Reese, who's a 6/8, Sean Davis at scrum half, Oshan Darwin Lewis at centre, Ollie Das, who's I think his actual name's really long. It's like Thailand or something. The family name is from. He's a winger, predominantly can play fullback, and then Cody Stone fullback/winger. So we know Cody Stone quite a bit. Has played for the Rags and for Wales under-20s this year. We've seen Tom Howe at hooker. I think I spoke about him briefly. He was under 16, but playing at under 18. Has been captain of Wales under 18 this year. Really promising player. I think it's a interesting move that they put him in the senior academy in his first year of sixth form now going into year 12. They obviously rate him very highly. There may have been some others sniffing around there. Evan Reese has looked good for the Rags second half of the season. I think he was too old to play for Wales under 18, so I think they bumped him up to the Rags a bit quicker. But he hasn't looked out of place. And then I think Sean Davis is probably the standout of the 7 names there. It's captain Wales under 18s. Pretty much won player of the match before Glantaf even started some of their games in the College League this year. I mean, that's how good he's been. People might know his brother Jack, who was on our books briefly and is at the Scarlets now. But yeah, he looks a real player at 9, somebody who is just obviously better than everybody else on the pitch, and I suspect we'll see quite a bit of him for the Rags. I suppose the question about some of these guys coming under 18 is whether they go into Buck Super Rugby, but I'm not sure if they're all going to university or not. But certainly, I'd expect Sean Davis to be playing heavily either Bucks or Rags next season.
So maybe we'll try and get Gruff back on the pod, and maybe he can give us a lowdown on what he thinks roughly what the plans are for a lot of these boys. Then
I think there'll be a few more as well. Just to say that Griff said that they weren't finished, so I think they're probably looking at a couple more names as well before the start of next season.
Yes, yeah, excellent. I said it'd be interesting to see if despite the cameo presence of our rivals, whether or not the Rags get into the EDC next season, whether or not that ends up being a lot more. We start seeing that as a lot more academy heavy than we perhaps have in other years. Otherwise, only other news I've got is Arwell Robson looks like he's leaving the club after one season. Unfortunately, I just don't think it worked out for him, and I think with Sheedy coming home, we're fairly well stocked at fly half now, and we've got 2 decent tens, and then we've got we've got Ben Thomas as emergency cover, and then we've got Harry Wild in the academy. So, as I said, just a bit unfortunate, I guess.
Yeah, I'm a bit disappointed by this one. I think I really do feel for him because when he came in, I was quite excited because I remember him at under 20s level and starting at Dragons, he was really good attacking threat, and I thought he was really good in pre-season actually, particularly with ball in hand. Um, but I think he then didn't get his opportunity. Then when he got his opportunity, he tried. I can't remember. It was against one of the South African teams, wasn't it? And he tried to really push the boat out and try and get everything perfect. And there were a couple of kicks out on the full. There were a couple of things, a couple of forced passes, and it just didn't work because he was so. He'd obviously built it up that he had to make an impact, had to have an effect on the game, and because he was so obsessed with that, he ended up having a negative effect on the game, which then obviously knocked him down the pecking order again. And sadly, it's never quite worked out for him. I am disappointed for him. One thing it does say is how good the form of Tinas Dabia has been, and also that it's clear that Sherratt has his man, which is Tinas. And when you're trying to build a side and build a side that is perhaps going through a transitional period, you want some steady faces or steady people in certain positions, and 10 is that crucial position. So I can understand why there hasn't been much chopping and changing. But yeah, I hope for the best that Arwell finds a really good opportunity next season and has plenty of opportunity to show what he could do, because he has definitely got plenty of talent.
Anything you want to add, Dad?
I watched him to segue into the Prem bit. I watched him play for the Rags on Saturday. He's a class above that. I mean, he was cruising from that field like miles better than everybody else. But yeah, I think Arwen summed it up well. He just hasn't quite had the opportunity / taken the small opportunities he has had at the top level. So in an ideal world, you'd keep him as third choice probably if budgets were at a suitable level. But where we are now it's probably best for both parties to shake hands and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Either way, we all wish you the best wherever you end up, Arwell. As it's sort of been alluded to quite heavily. Dan, do you want to discuss the Rags game? So another resounding victory.
We were bloody
on nearest and
brilliant.
nearest.
We were fantastic in the first half. One of the best halves of Rugby FC, and then we completely stopped playing in the second half and just decided we were already in the playoffs and couldn't be bothered anymore. Scored some. I mean, first half performance. I thought it'd be quite a close game actually against Merthyr. They had a bit of cup final hangover to a degree, but they're always big and physical, and they're quite tough to break down whenever you play them. But I mean, we just absolutely blew them away. Some of the tries we scored in the first half were superb. Arwell was way too good. Derry Cross is a class above. Luke Pollock, it looks really good at outside centre. I think he's been one of the Rags player of the season this year, coming out of Cardiff Uni. And then some of the guys up front, the Hud brothers, Lucas De La Rua was just cruising round as well, to be honest. Alan Rees is one of the smaller hookers in the league, but I don't know, he just makes yards every time. Unbelievable. So yeah, I can't actually remember what the final score was, 40 or 20 something in the end, but we got a bonus point by about 20 minutes, I think. So at that point it was just feet up. They will have to play much better for the full 80 minutes if they're going to beat anybody in the playoffs. But job done on Saturday, and just on a general level, I think it's a hell of a job for them to get into the playoffs with. There's been like shortage of numbers. There's been rumours about Steve Law sort of not taking his payment so that other players could get paid, and the start of the season was a real tough time, I think, pre-takeover for the Rags. But the way they pulled it back second half of the season and got that fourth spot against above some pretty good teams, Pooler and Pontypridd have looked good, particularly with the new coaches in. It's a credit to the young players that are there and also the more senior spine of that team as well that's been built.
Is that your polite way of saying this is as far as it goes for Cardiff this season because of who they've got in the semis?
I'd bloody love to beat Newport. I would absolutely, in full Kevin Keegan style, I'll love it if we beat them. but yeah, I think, the good thing is pressure off. Nobody expects Cardiff to win that semi-final, so they can go out there and give it a really good go. I mean, unfortunately, there's a reason why nobody expects us to beat those teams as well. So.
Did you see the scoreline for Newport on the weekend?
Yeah, I was stood next to Tony, Big T on Twitter, if you know him, whose wife, he's a Bridgend season ticket holder because his wife, and he was sort of going, well, it's 40 now, it's 60 now. And like, it's like, they're not stopping? Or...
So yeah, final score at Newport Bridgend was 89-26, if you want to know how steep a challenge that's going to be for Cardiff. I think
Well, Lilo is back from his ban now, so he can have his dream game against
They
Newport
should
RFC.
play him just for the banter. They should
It would
definitely
just
play him.
although a squad
and
battle of 10 if they play the Matt O'Brien against Sadwell. I'd watch that.
That'd be quite a good battle, that.
Mm.
yeah. Yeah, just going on to the third. So obviously that covers two of the three Premiership sides we follow. Do you just want to talk briefly about the Pontypridd game, Caroline? And maybe just sort of wrap up the Premiership as it is.
Yeah, got a win, 2-point win up in RGC. I know Johan Dyer goes to every game. He was going straight from Gloucester to that game, so fair play to him. Had a 5:30 train from Gloucester to get up to RGC to watch that one. But yeah, I think it's been a weird season for Pontypridd, and on top of that, what's going on with the EDC, it's sad. It's a bit of an end of an era for them, I think, and Merthyr as well to an extent, but probably they haven't been as in that division as long as Pontypridd. And when you think of Pontypridd, a league that's going to be without Pontypridd in it, considering how dominant they have been at times and how crucial they've been to that league at other points, it's sad to see. But fair play to them. They got the win on the weekend. They're going to finish in a respectable position in the league, considering that they have, ended up without changing their coaching staff throughout the season as well. And like Cardiff as well have had several injuries and players unavailable. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the players there now. I don't know if you're, on the Welsh pod, we interviewed Josh Phillips a few months ago. Someone like him who's still young, only a couple of years out of under-20s, and maybe still has ambitions to get back to regional rugby. What do you do? Because he's had a great season with Pontypridd. Do you stay with Pontypridd, or do you then look for a team that's going to be in the EDC? So we'll have to see what happens to them going into next season. It'll be interesting.
He signed for Swansea, apparently.
Oh, there we go.
No,
That answers my question.
Yeah,
but you know what I mean. He's an example, but maybe Dan's answered my question.
Yeah, literally, of all the players you could have picked, I only know that Josh Phillips is signed for Swansea. But yes, there are certainly others. Like I would say, somebody like Ryan Wilkins at Ponty, who was formerly of us. Like, was he 21, 22? Probably looked really good with us, but for injury could have maybe stepped to the first team. But yeah, if you're staying at Ponty and you're not exactly putting your hand up to get back in the program at this point.
Yep.
Yeah. So moving on then. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, so playoff, the semi-finals, I don't know when they've been played, but it's going to be Newport versus the Rags and Llandovery hosting Ebbw Vale, I believe. Is that correct? Or is there still some things that need to be sorted?
Llandovery can finish top if they win both of their remaining games with a bonus point. I think they'll finish above Newport by a point.
That does seem quite likely given how well they've been going.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's against, but I think the provisional dates are the 4th, 5th of May for the semi-finals, and then the following weekend for the final. But I think last year it was on like a Sunday night or something stupid, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure whenever it's played, it will have been well thought through by the WRU.
There's a very nice. I don't know if you've seen the timer dating down for the Cardiff RFC website, dating down to the playoff, which is quite nice. I like that. Like 16 days. It's counting down the seconds, which I really do appreciate as well.
All right. Moving on. So we'll go swing from sort of semi-pro community up to international. Wales women went to Virgin Media Musgrave Park to play Ireland women. I think safe to say none of us expected that.
No. Sorry, I probably should expand. No, I didn't expect them to get hammered by Ireland 36-5. What I will say is it does say a lot about and people are going to say it's down to professionalism. It's not just down to that. Ireland last year lost 31-5 in Cardiff, didn't they? And I think that was without a lot of their sevens players. There's no Parsons, there's no Eve Higgins in the centres. Who's one hell of a player, by the way. Scored a great try on the weekend. And those sort of players have been crucial to their backline, and that's where they got the success against Wales a little bit. Outside edge defense again for Wales was a bit lacking. The last player defense, especially, I think it's been. It was also uncharacteristic errors, and I think that was one of the words that Carys Cox used in presser this week, which was saying it's uncharacteristic of us that the line out was malfunctioning. Line out has malfunctioned a lot this Six Nations so far. I don't know exactly what that's down to. I can't really put my finger on it because it's not as if it's a completely different set of players. So it's a bit confusing why that has been struggling as much as it has. There's it hasn't worked with Shaky at 10 so far. The plan was to have a more expansive game plan. That was all that was being talked about. Get the backs involved, get the back three, exciting back three, young back three involved. That hasn't worked. It was also, you look back to a few seasons ago where Shaky George, there was a clamour for her to be part of it because they wanted distance on the kicks. But now I think the way Wales are wanting to play with a bit more width, it almost calls for a Keely Powell to play at 10 because I think she's made a real impact when she's come on the bench, come off the bench, I should say. I thought Carys Cox went well, moving into the centre and offered a bit more cutting edge. Although I do hope that Karen Lake's injury isn't too bad. I know she was having a scan the other day. I don't know the conclusions on that so far. And likewise with Bethan Lewis, that also derailed Wales. But overall, this week, both Carys Cox and Courtney Keat that were on for presser duty this week both said that they were hurting after that result. And I think the pressure is now starting to get to maybe Johan Cunningham, not quite the players, but definitely Johan Cunningham. Few people calling for his head. I'm not quite on that bandwagon yet. I'd be interested to see what Dan thinks, but I think there's a lot to be said about continuity in that position. I just think tactically they've been outfought at times as well, which is the slightly more worrying thing. And maybe have just got a lot of things wrong and a low on confidence.
Yeah, I mean, I think Arwen's covered the on-field stuff really well there. I didn't watch it live, so I already knew the score, and I'd seen a few comments going into watching it on yesterday, and it was worse than I was expecting even then. I agree. There's no point calling for Cunningham to be sacked at this point. That's very knee-jerk. I think he's built up enough credit in the bank to be given a chance to turn it around, and I did find, I've got his quote here that the BBC picked out. So I think we have to be honest with each other. We're probably not comparing apples with different countries at the moment, which I thought was a weird comment to make after playing Ireland, because if it was England or France, that's definitely not a comparable setup. But if anything, we should be ahead of Ireland. We were professional good 12 months before. Their women's game was in a right mess. I think the IRFU gets praised for sort of the men's pathway and how they've dealt with that, but their women's game was absolute shambles. Lots of infighting going on there. And so now he's saying that we're not comparing apples with Ireland. Does that mean that there's wider problems there? That WRU have sort of almost put a bit in place. We've done all right, and then they put their feet up and said, "Oh, that's sorted. Now we've sorted women's rugby. Off we go." There's something not quite right there. I thought Hannah Jones's comment about sort of lacking want and passion is maybe more specific around the culture, maybe within the squad at the moment, where there's something needs to change there. But I don't know. There's obviously something behind the scenes which isn't going right, as well as the on-field stuff. And yeah, that's an odd comment from Cunningham, which probably needed a bit more context. Maybe, like, potentially it's something as simple as he's just trying to say anything to deflect a bit of blame off the players at this point, and trying to protect them a little bit. They are a much better team than they're showing. It's not that we've got poor players or that we're massively poorly coaching. I think it could simply just be it went wrong on Saturday, and that does happen sometimes. And how we bounce back will be important. But yeah, lots of questions hanging over the last 2 weeks of this competition, certainly.
Yeah, sorry, just to jump back in, but the one on the Hannah Jones comment, I think people were at pains to stress that that was taken out of context a little bit with
Okay.
what was put on social media. But I think with Cunningham's comments, it's a sign that I don't want to say it's difficult to say complacency, but the initial statement from Nigel Walker when he came in was something along the lines of "We're gonna have the best pathway in the world." Well, Wales have not got the best pathway in the world. I'm nowhere near it, and no, I would say are definitely closer than they were 3 years ago, because and we'll come into the brilliance of the pathway in a bit, but it's still problems there, and at the national level and the and just not having a professional team in Wales at the moment does seem baffling, and I do get why there's so much a clamour for that situation to be resolved, because so many of those players haven't been playing consistently, or certainly weren't on the back of the WXV, and then have started playing more regularly. Obviously, a lot of them, what is it, 12 of them play for Gloucester, or are part of Gloucester's setup rather, because they don't, not a lot of them play every week. So it's a bit of a difficult one going forward, I think. But yeah, it's we spoke about it after the men's Six Nations. There needs to be a review. This one, I think, there really needs to be a review. Last time Wales lost heavily against Ireland, I think, was 3 years ago. They lost. I can't remember, but they were nilled by Ireland at home, and that was that. The reaction to that was professional contracts to get the girls getting some money for their jobs and give them an opportunity to become better, a better opportunity to become better, I should say. Um, Now there needs to be a serious review of why have Ireland clearly leapfrogged them, or seemingly leapfrogged them? Why has Scotland managed to close the gap while Wales haven't managed to close that gap above them to the extent? But yeah, that's the negative part. We can move on to the positive part, can we?
Well, I was going to say I was going to have my 2 bits. So
Yeah.
I've been instructed by Rap Head Office that we've got to focus on the positives. So Ireland were amazing, like the physicality and intent, despite the union not giving a shit, which is incredibly worrying. That this is when the IRFU put the bare minimum into the Irish women's team, and they proved that. Eve Wafer basically I think that's 3 player of the matches in a row. Made a
She's
debut.
class. Class.
Sam Monaghan, unbelievable. It's like she had our calls, because she managed to mess up our lineup very well, and a lot of that was her pressure. It wasn't necessarily us doing it wrong. I do think Johan Cunningham should have listened to the pod when I said bring Natalia Jones in, and I also feel like we should have started with a bulkier 7. I think they thought we'd be able to beat Ireland up at front, and frankly, that's not the case. I do think we've gotten a bit complacent with that, and not necessarily developed the other parts of our game as to where they should be. I mean, you've mentioned the out wide defence, just isn't quite good enough. The kicking game's still an issue, and then I feel like the attack. But to be honest, I could take the moments I have about the attack and put it on any Welsh side, professional, semi-pro, national, international club. It does seem to be an issue where, so me and Hugh from Pirate Rugby Pod have moaned about quite a lot in the past. But yeah, so we've got France up next week. At the start of this tournament, I thought we'd have a good go against France. Less sure now, and then obviously final game is Italy. So it's starting to become that's going to be a must-win game again, which sounds very similar to the conversations we were having during the men's Six Nations.
Yeah, it is. It is must-win game, isn't it? Yeah, France, I think, played a bit of a rotated side at times and probably not shown all their true colours, and maybe did that a little bit more so against Italy. Likewise, Italy on the flip side haven't really turned up to the extent that we may be expecting. They haven't kicked on in the last 12 months, I think, compared to Ireland and Scotland. So I think it is a real challenge. As you mentioned, we've got to speak a positive. I do want to get a quick word in about Gwennan Hopkins, because I don't think I've been as excited about a player coming through in a long time, and that's men's or women's rugby. I really think she is the real deal, and that's that's not just on the pitch as well. I've for 19, she speaks so well in Welsh and English. It's just second nature to her, and she's inspirational. You listen to it, and she said, she's dreamt of playing for Wales since she was 4 years of age, and then she's getting a debut cap. She comes on, makes a huge impact, um, and scores a try on debut. And yeah, okay, the result isn't the ideal thing, but she is a really good prospect. And the people that were there at the press conference on Tuesday, and I hope she didn't mind us saying this, but afterwards we all turned to each other and went, well, there's Wales captain for the future, because it seemed obvious that the way she speaks, the way she is, how high quality a player she is with um, at speed ball carrying with late footwork. Technically, she's brilliant. She's gone through the pathway, and this is where the pathway has been brilliant. She said she's the first to be under Cardiff in Wales under 18s, Wales under 20s, Celtic Challenge, and now she's getting the opportunity at Wales, and she's also in the Hartbury setup as well. She's going to be brilliant, and yeah, her, Sian Jones. You can see these talented players coming through, and they technically and ball skills was the other thing that was mentioned by Courtney Keat. Their skills are technically far superior to people probably 10 years older than them, because they've grown up with the rugby ball rather than perhaps picked up the rugby ball at university level like some of the other players have. And it's going to be brilliant once these players get into their pomp in 10 years time in Grenard's case.
Yep.
And her mum is still playing for club rugby apparently in Cardiff, so get her in as well. I'd just call her up.
Yeah, I love it when you got mother daughter parents. There's it's at Sidmouth the Valkyries, so our women's team, and so like the captain Hannah, her mum retired last season, so they had like 2 seasons playing together, and her mum still comes in and sits on the bench just in case they're short for this season as well. So all about that. So moving swiftly on, so after what feels like 50 years, Cardiff, the senior side, have an actual game. So Friday night lights, which would have been great for me because I could have stayed, and then I realised it was in Ulster. So yeah, so we're going up against Ulster. Ulster currently 8th in the league. We're sort of in 12th. Also have had a bit of a bad campaign. I've seen rumours that the likes of Stephen Kitchoff, Ian Henderson will be playing. I don't know how true that is, but I feel like that could even the odds on our side. What do you both think about the upcoming game?
They have confirmed that. Just trying to look for the list of players now. They picked up a load of injuries playing. They played Claremont, I think, last week in Europe. It was like Henderson, Kitchoff, one of the other island, or Timoney, is it the flanker?
Yeah,
who's
Timoney, yeah.
in and around the island squad as well. Stuart Moore in the centres. They are missing a bunch of lads. They've been right up and down this season, sacked the coach. They've got some serious money problems by the sounds of it as well. I think Kitchoff is off at the end of the season as their sort of major signing, and their CEO has stepped down as well. So all is not right at Ulster, but I think going to any island team away is always tough. Ulster on a Friday night is always going to be tough in Belfast. It is a good chance. I think just looking at this game and the Edinburgh game as a sort of mini block for Cardiff, I think a result would be really good here. Just to within Cardiff, I think we know that the improvement that we've had throughout the season, and we know that if we don't win, it's not necessarily showing that we haven't improved at all. The way the fixtures have worked, we had the easier fixtures when we weren't so good at the start of the season. Now we're better, but we're playing tougher games in the second half of the season. So you can still be improving without really noticing on the results at this point. But just to have something tangible for the supporters and for those outside the bubble to really see that we are taking a step forward. I think a positive result, either from Ulster or Edinburgh, preferably both, would be really good. Our injury list is looking slightly shorter. I think Falatau's back this week. I think Teddy missed the last game through injury. He'd be back as well. Obviously, a couple of guys, Azarati and Adams, I'm thinking in particular, who are sort of carrying knocks through the Six Nations, have had 2-3 weeks off now to recover. So I think we're in a good spot. Ulster are not as physically imposing as they have been before, and we saw against Munster that when we come up against teams who are sort of similar playing styles to us, we can go toe to toe with these guys, and we can get a little bit of forward dominance at the right times. And if we can just brush up on the accuracy of that attacking game, which I think has let us down over the last 2 games or so, particularly in the red zone, if we can just nudge our sort of points per 22 entry up just by 2 or 3 points, we're in a really good position to get a positive result from there. But yeah, it's difficult to sort of balance how much you want to win with the fact that we are on this really long journey. I would really love for us to win one of the next 2 games.
Owen, do you wanna...
Yeah, the cynic in me when Dan started saying, he said it's been confirmed, and I thought he was going to say it's been confirmed that Cardiff have lost by 7 points after being ahead at 60 points. It's actually getting difficult. Look, with all the upheaval at Ulster, I think if you're ever going to win up there, this is a great opportunity. I don't think this is the best Ulster side you'll ever see. Obviously, they've got uh, a, a bit more to play for than Cardiff, although, as I discussed with Harley before the pod, Cardiff do still have a chance of top 8, even though it is bizarre and highly unlikely. But yeah, I think I do struggle to see Cardiff winning the game. I do genuinely think it'll be 4 or 5 points to Ulster, and it'll be one of those frustrating times. But you can get at Ulster if that 10-9 defensive structure they've got at the moment clearly isn't sorted. Doak isn't. For me, he's not a 10. I don't know if he's going to start at 10 this week, but if he is, I don't think he is a 10. He's a scrum half playing 10, and it's clear that when you watch him that he is. I'd like to see Cardiff target those areas. Ben Thomas has been running some really nice lines in that position in recent weeks, especially on not quite to the ability of Max Llewellyn, but in a Max Llewellyn-esque off the back of the lineup, he can do it and can target those players, and I'd like to see him doing it. Likewise, get Josh Adams doing what Josh Adams does best, which is attacking off the back of the lineup, coming on a subtle line behind the line out. If you remember the try he scored against Georgia in the World Cup in 2019, that sort of line that Wales use so well. And I think you can target them as well because they do tend to defend with a hooker at the back of the line out there, or certainly used to. So, yeah, look, it's a good opportunity to play Ulster, but it is still Ulster away, which is always going to be a challenge. Yeah, it'll be a good performance from Cardiff. We know that. It's just whether we get a good result.
Yeah, absolutely. Shall we just for a bit of fun? Shall we do our as we do have a game to predict the team for? Shall we do our usual completely inaccurate team prediction, despite what is an incredibly settled squad? So I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to pick a front row, and I'm going to go with I'm going to carry Belcher and Azarati. Any recourse on that? Anyone? Any shouts for any different names?
The Carry Doma sort of.
Yeah, it's 50-50 for them.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other, really.
I feel like it's Carry's to send him off on a good run.
Yeah, I suppose the only thing I would say is just for narrative reasons, do they start Doma this week and then start Carry next week so he comes off during the game and gets the applause in his last home game? I don't know. I don't know how much Sherratt thinks about these sort of things. It's something that I would consider.
I'd start them for both in the block.
No, I could do.
And give Dom the starts out in South Africa when they're probably going to want the strongest swimmage and loose head start.
Fair point.
It's mandatory. There's got to be a big ginger loose head playing at Ulster this season. So.
Yeah, so there's no kits off, so we've got to have a big red ginger, big red man. Dan, do you want to pick the second row?
Teddy and Seb, I think, pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Any calls for anyone else? I mean, for me, it's Teddy and Seb anyway.
No, I'd agree. I think it's probably going to be Man Young and I'd be stunned if Faletau starts. So I'm going to say Mackenzie Martin.
Yeah, so
I'd be absolutely.
Just don't ruin it. For me, the narrative is Faletau's coming back and he's going to show us this was the missing link, and we're just going to win everything now. He was those last 7 points we needed.
that could
Yeah,
be the case though, but with him off the bench, because that's when we really need somebody like Faletau. Really, is the last 20
the
minutes.
only problem is I find
convert the
Faletau is a
win.
really poor player off the bench. Like he's not a poor player, but like off the bench, I feel like he's one of those players who grows with the game.
There we go. That's going to be clipped up. If anything gets clipped up from us on social, Faletau, a really poor player. There we go.
Off the bench. Off the bench, and I've got this precedent for that. And the reason I picked front row is because it means that I get to do the easiest selection, which is halfbacks, which is Bevan and De Beer.
Is it though? Could Bertrand come straight in?
I don't know. I feel like Jockey's so keen on keeping like consistency. Like he's really avoided the risk of even resting De Beer. I reckon it would be it would have been Thomas if he was fit. I feel like it's Bevan.
I don't disagree.
And also, I think Bevan's De Beer have made quite a good partnership now. So, and it is almost solidifying maybe our first choice partnership.
I think it'd be interesting if Bertrand does start. Does that suggest for some reason in my head if Bertrand starts, unless Bevan's got a knock that we don't know about, but if Bertrand starts, it suggests to me that they see a more a longer future for him at the club. If he's off the bench and just I don't want to say making up the numbers because that's not quite. He's a much better player than that. But
the way Sherritt's used his spare 9 is basically making up numbers.
Yeah, at times, yeah. So if he's on the bench and there is cover, then that suggests that it's a short-term loan and it's just because Thomas is injured and they need someone in that slot. But if he starts regular games and starts 3 or 4 on the trot towards the end of the season, that to me suggests perhaps that it's a longer-term ambition to keep him towards next season.
And just to counter my own playing devil's advocate question, like Faletau coming on in the last 20 minutes, Bertrand who coming on in the last 20 minutes would be really good as well. Because I think particularly, obviously his experience, but I think you could then say to Bevan, you're not going to play the 80, definitely not now, because like we've got somebody on the bench who can come on. So properly empty your tank for 55, 60 minutes, give us as much tempo as you can, all of your tricks, all of your threatening the fringes, don't have to conserve anything, and then we'll bring on somebody who won't kick it away in the 80th minute.
That wasn't necessary, was it?
I'm still hurting about it, to be honest.
Go on. Talk us through the centre partnership. What is it? Ben Thomas and another.
Yeah, it's definitely Ben. Does Lilo come straight back in, or do they keep Grady there? Grady was good there against Munster. We know Lane's injured, but Cabango's fit now. Does Grady go back out? I don't know. I still kind of think if Lilo's fit, you pick him at 13.
It's just our best 13.
Yeah,
I still think he's one of the best in Wales. So
I'll go Ben and Ray and Mason. Whoever picks the back 3, I would imagine pops him onto the wing then, and then with Ray of advancing years. If he only does 60 on his return, then Mason can just slot in from then, really.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Grady is on the wing just purely because Teo Cabango's up for press this week, so that suggests that he's playing.
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
that was interesting. That was an interesting one. I didn't know that was the case. Unless there's something about Adams we don't know about, and they've left him at home this week or something. I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe they want to give his knees a proper recovery. Don't know how much he's healed after whatever it was he had during the Six Nations. So, Cohen, I'm guessing then your back 3, you're looking at Cabango, Winnett, and Adams.
Yeah, I wasn't there, but that apparently was up for press, so that I assume he's going to play in the back 3, unless it's more of a narrative thing along the lines of how amazing it's to have him back. He's going to be in the 23 jersey, but I'd be surprised if he's there as well. I think you're looking at probably Beetham in the 23. So I think that's the obvious back 3 options is Josh on one wing, Theo on the other wing, and Cam, fullback.
If that's the case, I'm happy to put Mason at 13 as the selection. Just maybe they're just saying now's the time we've moved on from Ray a little bit, where he's been missing for a few weeks and we're forward planning. We can't, or
So
he's going to
unless
be
Max
announced
Clark comes
as
back.
he could be announced as leaving, and they're saving him to play next week in the last home game or something. Maybe the other option.
Any recourse for that one? So we go into Grady for 13.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would. That's what I'm in there. I mean, he has to start essentially. If he's fit, he starts Mason. Uh, just because of the sort of the size that he gives you and the pace and stuff. Yeah, he's a bit all around the edges, but I don't at this point. I don't think you can not start him anymore.
Right, two big choices now. So first of all, are we saying we're sticking with Sherritt's usual 5-3, or do you think he's going to go back to a 6-2 for this game? Ulster, even with some of the big names, they are quite a physical team.
Yeah, I would say 6-2 probably. I would lean towards. He's shown no inclination to put another fly half on the bench. So Beetham can play centre and full back. Probably play wing if you asked him to as well.
I think he has at some point or another this season.
Yeah.
But also you've got Grady, you can move out.
Yeah,
I mean, it does make your centres a bit
utility-ish
thin because both your centres, and if Beetham goes into 12 or 13, then you've got both. But
yeah, I mean we don't have many 13s anyway. I think the only other option is Beetham and
it'd be Beetham like Max Clark, I guess.
I don't know if he's still crocked. I don't know.
Yeah, but I said I don't know. That's the only other, or it'd be one of Halaholo or Lilo off bench yet.
What's the back, the loose forward options? We've got Donald's obviously the obvious one.
I was thinking, you could probably go with someone like Thornton as your 19.
Thornton, Donald, and Ellis.
Yeah.
Faletau.
Yeah, no, I forgot about him.
Yeah.
So if
that was the reason we did the 6-2
are a bit knackered, we can do them, but you can swap them both out because Donald looked pretty good in the second row versus Munster, I thought.
Yeah, I think I personally think it might be a 5-3 and Donald and Faletau on the bench, which to me does. Go on.
It's just a risk with no open side cover. Then, if Young goes down, you are stuffed for a proper fetcher.
Yeah,
I'm saying that. I mean, if you think about a lot of the pack, a lot of our tight 5 forwards are pretty decent over the ball as well. Man can do it. He's definitely more.
It would be
down fast.
It would be botching rather than like for like would be the issue of it.
Yeah,
but I mean, there's always got to be a compromise somewhere.
Yeah,
so we'll make it.
Good position to be
make
in.
a decision. Are we doing 5-3? Doing 6-2? Dan's saying 6-2. Carwyn, you're saying 5-3.
All right, you're the host. You get the deciding vote.
Right, I'm gonna go purely just because I want as many back rows in this Cardiff team as possible. So I'm going to 7-1. 6-2. I'll go 6-2. So look at Thornton, Donald, Faletau. Then I've got Birchenow and Beetham, and then so front row replacements: Domachowski at 17. 18. If Littrick's not fit, we thinking Will Davis King or Parker?
Davis King seems to be ahead of Parker at the moment, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think Jockey quite likes the fact that he almost adds that carry physicality in the carry later on. Then 16, we going for Evan or Evan?
Evan Daniel was a random late appearance on the bench for the Rags on Saturday. He wasn't named, but then just turned up on the day. I don't know, asked for a game or whatever.
Maybe they wanted him to get some minutes in his leg.
So I wonder if that means that it's Lloyd this weekend and they were giving Daniel a run out last weekend.
Makes sense.
Yeah, we'll go Lloyd. So our team, we're going Carey, Belcher, Azarati, Seb Teddy, second row, Man, Young, Martin. Sounds like a really weird prog rock band. Bevan and De Beer, 9 and 10. And then backline from 11 to 15. Cabango, Ben Thomas, Mason Grady, Josh Adams, Cam Winnett, Ben Sherv, Evan Lloyd, Corey Domachowski, Will Davis King, Thornton, Ben Donnell, Faletau, Birchenow, Beetham. Are you happy with that? For me, it's a term of sort of like cover and stuff. I mean, yeah, we probably could do with another proper out 7, but
that's a hell of an 11 to 15. They're all, I say, young. Josh Adams
isn't
so young.
If that backline clicked, clicks, that could cause problems for a team who do seem to struggle to connect their forwards and their backs.
Yeah, so it's just young Welsh talent as well as what everyone asks for all the time. But I mean, they are some seriously talented. I mean, that could be a Wales backline in the not too distant future.
Yeah, so I would have thought Adams would be a senior head at that point. It feels like only yesterday he broke onto the scene.
He's the senior head, but also the most likely to start a fight. So
Oh, it's a bit like Glasgow when they had Ryan Wilson as captain, isn't it? Right. So I think that's all. We do have some. So Colin, you put out on the Twitterers about what sort of who we should sign. Welsh internationals, realistic cheap person, other international quality players. Do you just want to give a quick roundup of that before we sign off?
Yeah, it was a lot of response, so thank you very much for that. It was basically me putting it out there on the back of our pod last week and Dan's brilliant spreadsheet, which I have still been perusing over and trying to work out if there are any. I think there were about 20 million people suggesting that you'd forgotten things or missed things out, but it was all good. Yeah, I think this week when I put it out, I was trying to think of what position was most likely that we need, and I think the general consensus is a second row, which I think Harley and I have said several times. I think is fair to say over the course of the year, Harley.
Yeah, and I think I said I'm reading Dan's work for many years. It's something that's been a recurring theme as well.
Yeah.
All Cardiff fans can get it tattooed on their arm. We need a second row.
less tarty backs, more fast, more fast.
Yeah, so there's been a couple, calling for a couple of locks or a couple of. I do like the idea of Cobus Reineken. Don't think it's going to happen.
That was a really left field one, especially when they said a Springbok. There's rumours of a Springbok 9, which I don't think we will sign a Springbok 9, but I feel like Reinach is one who sort of edging his way out. Maybe his price tag's coming down a bit now.
Yeah,
that could be an interesting one. And in terms of like in a nippy 9, I'm not going to say the line or the commentators say, but he is a very quick man.
Yeah, I really like him. Another couple of shouts that I really do like. Louis Hennessy, I really like that shout as a centre. I think I might have mentioned it last week. If I didn't, I mentioned it in my brain. Alan Davis again, another one that I think has mentioned a couple of times. I think that was you, Harley, last week. Scrum half.
I think it's just I think he's out of contract. That's the reason I thought. Well, he's Welsh qualified, which does sort of help with the signing side of things.
Yeah, and James, good suggestion, Johnny Green. Wales under 20s lock at Harlequins.
I didn't want to bring it up because it's James, but that was a very good suggestion.
It's a very good suggestion.
I can't wait to get the message when he hears that bit of pod.
Any particular suggestions from yourselves?
Yeah, so Dan, any names jump out at you?
Do you know, I retweeted it and didn't actually consider the question myself. But I mean, the general theme is correct. Lou said a second row 9 centre. Well, I like Louis Hennessy. I also like Bryn Bradley as a second centre option as well. Just young Welsh guy. Obviously, Harlequins are losing Andre Esterhazen, but they're talking about replacing him. If you're Bryn Bradley and looking at them bringing someone else in ahead of you, you're kind of thinking, am I getting the minutes here or not? It's difficult to say. The problem is, it's difficult to say who's realistic for Cardiff at this point in time, because how much money do we have? And do people want to come to us as well? So there was none of the names jumped out that I thought were particularly like top draw. I do like Aled Davis as an option. I don't know if he's exactly what we need attacking wise, but certainly as a kicking option, he's very, very good. And that is perhaps what we've lacked in 9s at times. Well, post Lloyd anyway. So if Bevan becomes the new Thomas as the kind of more attacking nippy option, and then Aled Davis as your finisher, your game manager, last 20, that's a really nice balance to have. Probably as well with respect to Aled even coming back. I don't think he's going to reforce his way back into a Wales squad necessarily. With with Ruben Morgan-Williams and Archie Hughes coming through, Dane Blacker sort of still there or thereabouts as well. I think he would be available for most of the season. So I don't mind that as an option at all.
Yeah.
Go on,
So Bryn Bradley was one of the names that jumped out for me. I would quite like to see sort of maybe us dipping into sort of maybe the Rugby Europe Championship and the Rugby Europe Super Cup type thing of maybe picking up one of the sort of like the Romanian or Georgian type 5 forwards. I know when his contract was up in the air before he finally re-signed with the top 14 side. Just as he was breaking through to the Jordan side, I really, really like the look of Peko Gorgadze. But I've got a feeling we're definitely going to be able to afford him now. I think I've missed him. I mean, I think what we need to do is once his short-term deal's done, just re-sign our hip and see if he'll play loose head. Or convert one of the tight heads.
Knowing all this, we'll end up with Martins from Portugal, and you're just another back row option. That's Cardiff move. I'd love to see.
I think he spent a lot of time at second row. To be fair, he's a fantastic line-out option.
He's a second row 7 hybrid. If ever there's a Cardiff signing,
it's Crush Trinzer all over again.
But no, I think Louis Hennessy jumps out to me. Whenever I hear Bryn Bradley, I just think Blenheim Bowen. I think it's just the alliteration, which just makes it easy for me.
Not necessarily the worst thing.
No.
If we had the reincarnation of Blenheim. Shout out for that fantastic comic book. It's still available. If you haven't got a copy, you should get one.
Yeah. And then Lou said, I do suspect that to be coming from somewhere in the Southern Hemisphere. And I think that would be a good move if possible. Otherwise, there's not a loose head out there that jumps out to me and says, and I'm thinking, oh, brilliant, that'd be a great signing. Certainly not within Wales.
Kitchos free, and we're missing a big ginger.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
No, but
might
as well feed the rumour mill whilst we're here.
Yeah. We also want to sign. What else do we want to sign? Give me a name for any name. Geordie Barrett. I hear he's only he's free for 6
months. Only on a 6. He's going to be only going to be on a 4 or 5 month deal. Now, there's this lesser known Springbok who's sort of trawling around Ireland at the moment. No one's really heard of it. Is Jean Clean there? he could be interesting.
Yeah.
I was having a discussion with someone the other day, and they mentioned as a 9. I don't think it was like we're going to sign him, but just the sort of level that we were looking at was Keegan Johannes, who's the Bulls backup 9 at the moment. I think he came off the bench against Northampton in their much changed team of controversy.
I thought he was pretty good.
Yeah, he's 23, 24.
Like a lot of box halfbacks. A lot to be desired game management wise.
Yeah,
let's be fair, that really fits in with the Cardiff vibe.
He's played like relatively sparingly for the Bulls, but has had enough game time to sort of develop enough, and it works well with Tina Stabia, bringing somebody in from not a top level South African. So, and that's maybe still, but I don't think from what Jockey said, I've seen some quotes of what he said in his press conference this week about sort of the positions they're looking to strengthen and how they're going to do it. We're not going to go and splash the cash with the healthy capital and that. They're going to be clever about how they do it. It's still a 2-3 year. So I think there might be some people who are disappointed that we don't go and get sort of a marquee signing straight away, but I think to me that's actually a positive in terms of saying from Health for Capital that we're in it for sort of not just the short term. We're not just going to come in and make vanity signings and then disappear. We're going to come in and we've already seen there's 5 scholarship lads in the academy. There's 7 new senior academy signings. So we're going to have like 12 to 15 academy players next year. They're building a base before adding these players on top. So somebody like Kozaranak, even in his later year, is good, but it's not going to be a big name like that. They're not going for names; they're going for squad building, which is annoying in some respects because you want the big name, but it's also probably the right way to do it.
I mean, I'd rather a good, solid 30 players who you're going to get a good level of performance week in, week out. Yeah, right. It means we're not challenging for Heineken Cup next season. but then we're going to be in the Challenge Cup, so it doesn't really matter. It's get that established team. It's a bit of a cliche because they did end up buying in the big names after, but almost that Exeter model without the racism. There you go. There's a podcast title for the week. Where you basically you have your core group of local lads and you bring them through and they all work together and gradually improve and they become quite a tight unit. So I think that is definitely the way. And Health seem very keen to it's on the redevelopment and the actual getting Cardiff sustainable, not as just trying to turn a quick buck. Which, let's be fair, if you are getting into a sports team to turn a quick buck, you're either naive or doing something hella shady. I think that's, unless anyone has any last comments, queries.
Nope.
I think we'll call. I'm not going to do prediction. I'm not going to bother with predictions for the Ulster game. So all that's left for me to say is thank you to Cowan and Dan for joining me for another week of chatting Cardiff rugby. And thank you all for listening. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and check out the YouTube video with all the random shorts. Ta-ra for now.
Yeah.